So the first thing we're going to do is learn to make a simple Flask web applications. So to do this, once you have Visual Studio installed, make a directory where you're going to create all your projects. And I'm going to create a folder here where I'm going to put this project. I'm going to call it Simple Local Flask application. And then I'm going to open this up, and you should be, if you've installed Visual Studio Code with all the regular options, you'll have the ability to open with code. If not, you might want to redo the install and make sure that you selected add code to your right-click menu. So I'm going to open this up. And in this folder here, let's see, is it open yet? Yeah, so now we've once you've done that, Visual Studio Code will open up, and you'll have that directory open here. If you didn't, you can also just open up Visual Studio Code and open folder here, and just go and find that folder and open it up that way. So either way will work. Once we have this, then what we're going to do is let's create a Python script, and we can do that by new file, and we're going to call, let's see, we'll call this one app.py. And we're going to say from Flask import Flask app is equal to Flask, and we'll put double underscore name. So this is a magic variable which basically just pulls in the name of the application, which in this case will be app. And so we're instantiating a Flask. What's a Flask? Well, it's the actual website. And then we're going to say app.route, and we'll explain what this is in a little bit. And we're going to define a function here. Hello will be the name of the function, and it's just going to return hello world. And that's our basic Flask startup. And so now the other thing we want to do is we want a virtual environment where we're actually going to install the Flask framework. So rather than installing the Flask library into the entire computer for everything I want to use, we're going to use something called a virtual environment that will make it easier to deploy this application later, and also will ensure that this project will have everything it needs located in this directory. So to do that, we're going to open up a terminal, and the nice thing about Visual Studio Code is it allows you to create terminals, Windows PowerShell terminals, right inside of the application. You know, the other way would be that you would open it up this and say PowerShell, and it's exactly the same terminal, but it's opened up to this folder, and it's inside the application, so it makes it a lot easier. And what we're going to do in here is we're going to say Python 3 -m venv, and venv gets installed with our with our application, or with a Python. So it's something that comes with Python. And you'll notice that what happened is that whatever directory name we have here, that becomes that is our virtual environment. And inside of here, there's a scripts folder. That's where Python is located. And there is a lib folder. And inside of the lib folder, it will be where there's a site packages folder. And that site packages folder will have all of our library installs that we installed. So rather than be installed on your C drive for everything, any packages we install will be installed here. Any libraries or modules that we install will be installed there. So then what we can do is we're going to then activate this virtual environment. So before we do anything, any kind of installs, and before we work in this library, the first thing we do every time we access this is we need to activate our environment. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to type in source simple flask bin activate. Well, what's that? Well, this is simple Flask, and then under scripts, we have this activate command. And when we run that, let's try that again. I believe we can just do it this way. Simple Flask /scripts /activate. And I think what happened is that I took the code from the book, but I think things have changed a little bit in the way VNV works. We're going to go to scripts. And the way you know that this works is it tells you now that we're in the Simple Flask virtual environment. That means that now this Simple Flask folder is actually governing what libraries we have. And then once we're there, now we can say pip3 install Flask. And this will now use the pip package manager to install the Flask library in here. So I'm going to click on that. And now it's going out on the web. It's pulling down the Flask library. But it's also pulling down a number of libraries which Flask is dependent on. So you're going to see here, if you have your site packages folder open when it does this, you'll see all these packages get loaded up there. And you should see that it's successful, but you might get this warning that pip is an earlier version. If you want to, you can you can do that pip install upgrade pip command, and it'll upgrade your pip so that you don't see that warning anymore. Pip is the package manager program, and when you run it, if it's an earlier version, it'll tell you that you've got the earlier version. My Dropbox is actually interfering with this. If you do have something like Dropbox that may have a lock on it, you need to pause that, and I'll redo this, and this should work. Okay, so now I have my, pip upgraded. I have Flask installed. Now, how do we run this web application? Actually, in your book, they say to name this not app.py, but to name it main main.py. So I'm going to rename it so that this is main.py. And you'll see why here, because the next thing they do is they say we're going to say export Flask app equals main.py. Again, I think the command has changed, which brings up, how do we deal with those things that might have changed? Well, we can go to Flask's documentation. And so if you go to flaskprojects.com, they have a user guide, and they have installation instructions, and then a quick start. And this explains a minimal application. So so since we're doing power, so the difference is that the commands in your book are bash commands, but we need the PowerShell commands in Visual Studio Code. So when you're reading your book, you have to come over here and find the PowerShell commands if you're using Visual Studio Code. So here what we really need to say is env Flask app is equal to hello. And let's try this again. I had a little extra character in there. And now, oh, actually I did it wrong. It needed to be main. Because what we want to do is we need to tell Flask that main is our is where our Flask application is living. So now we fixed that. And then the next thing we're going to do is say Flask run. Now it gives you a warning that this is a development server, which yes, of course. And then it tells you it's running on HTTP 127.0.1.5000. So you can either just copy this. You can open up a browser, and inside of the web browser, you can just type it in. 127, and you'll see that when we go to here, one, it tells us that it gives us a little message that says someone pinged this server. And now here we can see where we said return hello world. It displays it here. You know, if I put hello Rob here, for example, and save it, and then stop the server by hitting Control C. So I hit Control C to stop the server, and then I'm going to hit Flask run again, and then I refresh this. You'll see now whatever change I has, and now it's saying hello Rob. So now, congratulations, you have made your first simple Flask web application. Now another thing we can do is we can add this statement at the bottom of our program. Right now, all our program really has done is it's imported a library, it's declared that an app it's instantiated this app thing, and then it's declared a function, but it really doesn't do much to start the program. What we can do is put in this check on the execution context, so we can see if the execution context is main. Then what we'll do is we'll say app.run debug equals true. We'll save that. So I'll save that. And then we can just run it like this. Actually, let me stop the execution here, so I'll hit Control C. And I'll hit Control F5 and run it, and let's see if it opens up. No, this doesn't work this way. We will have to go, because we're running in a virtual environment, we will have to say Flask run in here. And then run it that way. So then once you are done, we can hit Control C here to stop the application. And then to stop our virtual environment, we can say deactivate. And our application is complete. Thank you very much.